Danny Carter pressed his face against the frosted window of the habitat dome, watching the purple twilight fade over the ice plains of Frostheim. The wind howled outside, carrying crystals of frozen methane that sparkled in the last rays of the distant sun. At 12 years old, Danny had lived on this ice planet for 3 years now, ever since his parents took jobs as terraforming engineers at the colony. The heating station hummed steadily in the background. His mother and father were still at work, monitoring the giant thermal processors that kept the small human settlement from freezing solid. Danny was used to being alone in the evenings. He usually spent his time reading adventure stories on his tablet or watching videos from Earth, trying to remember what warm rain felt like. Tonight felt different, though. Something in the air made Danny restless. He walked to the kitchen area and heated up some synthetic noodles for dinner. The food dispensers on Frostheim never made anything that tasted quite right. Everything had a slightly metallic flavor that reminded Danny they were living on the edge of survivable space. He was halfway through his meal when he heard it. A scratching sound at the outer airlock door. Danny froze, his fork suspended in mid-air. Nothing should be at their door. The colony was surrounded by kilometers of empty ice. The nearest wildlife lived deep underground, avoiding the brutal surface temperatures. The scratching came again, more urgent this time. It was followed by a sound that made Danny's heart jump, a weak, chirping cry. Something alive was out there, and it sounded scared. Danny abandoned his dinner and ran to the airlock control panel. The external camera showed only swirling ice crystals in the darkness. He adjusted the thermal sensors and gasped. A small heat signature huddled against the door, barely visible through the storm. Every safety rule Danny had ever learned told him not to open that door. Never open the airlock without proper clearance. Never let unknown organisms into the habitat. Never break quarantine protocols. But that crying sound came again, weaker this time, and Danny's hand moved to the control panel almost by itself. The outer door hissed open. The inner door remained sealed, keeping the habitat's warmth inside. Through the small window, Danny could now see what was making the noise. A dragon hatchling lay collapsed on the airlock floor. Danny had seen dragons before, but only in videos and from a great distance. The species ruled this entire sector of space. They were massive, powerful, and proud. The adult dragons that occasionally flew over the colony were the size of cargo ships, their scales gleaming like polished metal. This dragon was nothing like those giants. It was small, maybe the size of Danny's old dog back on Earth. Its scales were pale blue and almost transparent, like ice sculptures. Frost covered its entire body, turning the delicate scales white. The hatchling's wings were folded tight against its shivering body. Its eyes, large and golden, looked up at Danny through the window with an expression of pure desperation. Danny knew what he had to do, even though he knew it would cause trouble. He grabbed an emergency thermal blanket from the supply cabinet and cycled the airlock. The moment the inner door opened, freezing air rushed into the habitat. The temperature alarm began to wail. The dragon baby was so cold it felt like touching metal. Danny wrapped it quickly in the thermal blanket and pulled it inside. He slammed the inner door shut and cranked up the local heating system. The dragon made a pitiful chirping sound and pressed against Danny's chest, seeking any source of warmth. "It's okay," Danny whispered, carrying the shivering creature to his bedroom. "You're safe now." He piled every blanket he owned around the dragon and activated his bed's heating system to maximum. The hatchling's breathing was shallow and rapid. Its golden eyes watched Danny with a mixture of fear and hope that made his chest ache. Danny ran to get warm water and found some protein paste in the kitchen. He had no idea what dragon babies ate, but it seemed like a reasonable guess. When he returned, the hatchling had stopped shivering quite so violently. Some color was returning to its transparent scales. "Here," Danny said softly, offering water in a small bowl. "Try to drink something." The dragon sniffed the water cautiously, then lapped at it with a surprisingly small tongue. After drinking, it looked at the protein paste with interest. Danny squeezed some onto his finger, and the hatchling licked it off eagerly. Its scales began to glow very faintly with an inner blue light. Danny spent the next hour feeding the dragon small amounts and making sure it stayed warm. As the hatchling recovered, it became more alert. It chirped softly and tried to stand on wobbly legs. When Danny reached out to steady it, the dragon pressed its face against his palm, making a sound almost like a purr. "You need a name," Danny said, stroking the dragon's smooth scales. They felt cool to the touch, but no longer ice-cold. "How about Frost? That's where I found you." The dragon chirped as if in agreement. It climbed clumsily onto Danny's lap and curled up in a ball, its tail wrapping around his wrist. Within minutes, it was asleep, its breathing finally steady and calm. Danny sat very still, afraid to disturb the sleeping creature. His mind raced with questions and worries. Where had this dragon come from? Where were its parents? Dragon adults were known to be extremely protective of their young. They were also known to be proud and territorial. What would happen when they came looking for their missing baby? But as Danny looked down at the peaceful, sleeping hatchling in his lap, he knew he had made the right choice. Whatever consequences came later, he could not have left Frost to freeze outside in that storm. Some choices, Danny thought, were simple, even when they were difficult. The next morning, Danny woke to find Frost curled up on his pillow, the dragon's warm breath tickling his ear. The hatchling's scales had transformed overnight from pale, frost-covered blue to a brilliant sapphire color that seemed to shimmer in the dim bedroom light. Frost's eyes opened, revealing those striking golden irises, and the dragon chirped happily at seeing Danny awake. Danny put a finger to his lips. "Shh, we have to be quiet. My parents don't know you're here yet." Frost tilted its head, studying Danny with surprising intelligence. Then the dragon made a much softer sound. Barely a whisper of a chirp. Danny smiled despite his nervousness. This little creature was smart. Getting ready for the day while hiding a dragon proved harder than Danny expected. Frost wanted to follow him everywhere. When Danny went to brush his teeth, Frost waddled after him on 4 legs, wings folded tight. When Danny tried to close the bathroom door, Frost scratched at it and made distressed sounds until Danny let the hatchling back in. "You're going to get me in so much trouble," Danny muttered, but he could not help smiling as Frost tried to climb up his leg. Danny's parents had already left for the early shift at the heating station. They would not return until evening. That gave Danny the whole day to figure out what to do with his unexpected guest. He went to the kitchen and checked what food they had. Frost followed, making interested sniffing sounds at everything. Danny tried giving Frost some dried meat from the rations. The dragon devoured it eagerly, then looked up hopefully for more. Danny laughed and gave the hatchling another piece. As Frost ate, Danny noticed something strange. The dragon was staring at him with intense concentration, and suddenly an image flashed in Danny's mind. It was not a thought or a voice. It was more like watching a very brief video inside his head. He saw darkness, cold wind, and 2 massive dragons huddled around a nest, then a terrible rumbling sound and everything turning white, ice and snow falling from above. The big dragons pushing something small away toward safety before the avalanche buried them completely. Danny gasped and stumbled backward. The image vanished as quickly as it appeared. Frost chirped sadly, looking down at the floor. "Was that you?" Danny asked in amazement. "Did you just show me what happened?" Frost looked up, and another image appeared in Danny's mind. This time he saw the small dragon wandering alone across ice fields, getting colder and weaker until it spotted lights in the distance. The human colony. Frost had crawled for what must have been hours to reach the nearest habitat, which happened to be Danny's home. Your parents, Danny whispered, his throat tight. The avalanche killed them, and you were all alone out there. Frost pressed against Danny's leg, seeking comfort. Danny picked up the hatchling and held it close. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that happened to you. Over the next few days, Danny and Frost developed a routine. Danny would wake up early, feed Frost, and then spend hours researching everything he could find about dragons on the colony's computer network. He learned that dragons were one of the oldest spacefaring species in the galaxy. They valued honor, strength, and family bonds above all else. He also discovered something called the life debt tradition. According to ancient dragon customs, if someone saved a dragon hatchling's life during a moment of mortal danger, that dragon would form an unbreakable bond with their rescuer. The bond lasted until the dragon reached full maturity, which took about 15 years. Danny read that passage 3 times, his heart pounding. Had he accidentally bonded with Frost? The way the hatchling refused to leave his side suggested maybe he had. Frost grew stronger each day. The dragon learned to understand simple words that Danny spoke. When Danny said food, Frost would run to the kitchen. When Danny said hide, Frost would scurry under the bed. The hatchling was learning frighteningly fast. Frost also started trying to help with Danny's daily chores. When Danny swept the floor, Frost tried to push the dust into a pile with its nose. When Danny folded laundry, Frost attempted to drag socks across the room, usually tripping over them in the process. The dragon's efforts were clumsy but enthusiastic, and Danny found himself growing more attached to the little creature every hour. On the 4th day, disaster struck. Danny had left Frost sleeping in his room while he went to take a shower. He returned to find his mother standing in his bedroom doorway, staring at the dragon hatchling with wide eyes. Danny Carter, Lisa said, in a very quiet voice. Why is there a dragon baby in your room? Danny's mind raced for explanations, but his mother was a scientist. She would see through any lie immediately. I found it outside our airlock 4 days ago, he admitted. It was freezing to death. I couldn't just leave it out there. His mother stepped into the room slowly, studying Frost with professional curiosity. The dragon woke up, saw a stranger, and immediately scrambled to hide behind Danny's legs. Lisa's expression softened slightly. Do you have any idea how much trouble this could cause? She asked. Dragons are the most powerful species in this sector. If they think we kidnapped one of their young, they could shut down our entire colony. I didn't kidnap Frost, Danny protested. Frost came to me for help. Frost? His mother raised an eyebrow. The dragon peeked out from behind Danny and chirped at Lisa. Then Frost did something unexpected. The hatchling projected an image directly into Lisa's mind, the same memory of the avalanche and dead parents that Danny had seen days earlier. Lisa gasped and grabbed the doorframe for support. It can share memories telepathically. That's something only very young dragons can do before they learn speech. She knelt down slowly and extended her hand toward Frost. The dragon sniffed her fingers cautiously, then gave them a tentative lick. 3 weeks passed peacefully. Danny's father, Greg, had been just as understanding as Lisa once he learned the full story. The Carter family agreed to keep Frost hidden for as long as possible, though they all knew that eventually someone would come looking for the missing dragon. That day arrived on a cold morning when every alarm in the colony began blaring at once. Danny was teaching Frost how to fetch a small ball when the emergency sirens started. The dragon hatchling yelped in surprise and dove under the couch. Through the habitat windows, Danny could see colonists running toward the main shelter. His parents rushed into the room, their faces pale. Ship in orbit, his father said quickly. A dragon warship. It just appeared out of nowhere. Danny's stomach dropped. He knew this moment would come, but he was not ready, not even close to ready. The colony administrator, Helen Price, made an announcement over the communication system. Her voice shook as she spoke. All residents remain calm. A dragon delegation is requesting permission to land. They are searching for a missing hatchling. I repeat, they are searching for a missing dragon hatchling. Lisa looked at Danny with worried eyes. We have to tell them the truth. Hiding Frost any longer will only make things worse. Danny nodded, unable to speak. He reached under the couch and gently pulled Frost out. The dragon chirped nervously, sensing the tension in the room. Within an hour, 5 massive shapes descended from the sky. Danny watched through the window as the adult dragons landed in the colony's main plaza. Each one was enormous, easily the size of the transport shuttles that brought supplies from Earth. Their scales gleamed like polished armor in shades of red, gold, silver, and deep purple. When they moved, the ground trembled. The largest dragon was covered in dark bronze scales that looked almost like thorns. This dragon stood at the front of the group, its massive head held high with unmistakable authority. The other 4 dragons arranged themselves behind their leader in a military formation. Administrator Price appeared on the communication system again. The Carter family is requested to report to the main plaza immediately. Please bring the hatchling. Greg squeezed Danny's shoulder. Remember, son, you saved Frost's life. You did nothing wrong. But as they walked through the colony corridors toward the plaza, Danny felt like he was marching toward his doom. Other colonists watched from windows and doorways, their faces filled with fear and curiosity. Frost clung to Danny's chest, hidden under his thermal jacket, trembling. When they stepped out into the plaza, the cold air hit Danny like a physical blow. But it was nothing compared to the impact of seeing the adult dragons up close. They were absolutely terrifying. Each dragon's eye was larger than Danny's head. Their claws could easily tear through the habitat domes. Steam rose from their nostrils with each breath. The bronze dragon stepped forward, and when it spoke, its voice rumbled like distant thunder. I am Commander Thornscale of the Dragon Royal Fleet. We are searching for Prince Crystalwing, heir to the throne of the Frostheim region. Intelligence suggests the prince was last seen near this human settlement before disappearing. Administrator Price stood beside the Carter family, trying to look brave despite her obvious fear. Commander Thornscale, we had no knowledge of any dragon prince in our area. Our colony keeps to itself and respects all boundaries. Thornscale's massive eyes narrowed. Dragon hatchlings do not simply vanish. We have reason to believe your species may have taken the prince for political leverage or ransom. That's not true, Danny heard himself say. His voice sounded tiny and weak compared to the dragon's rumbling speech, but he forced himself to continue. Nobody took anybody. Frost came to us. All 5 dragons turned their attention to Danny. Being the focus of those enormous ancient eyes made Danny want to run and hide, but he stood his ground. Frost peeked out from under his jacket, golden eyes wide with fear. A silver dragon behind Thornscale gasped. The prince. The human child has the prince. Thornscale took a step forward and the ground shook. Human child. You will surrender Prince Crystalwing immediately. This is not a request. Frost chirped in distress and burrowed deeper against Danny's chest. The hatchling's claws dug into Danny's shirt, holding on desperately. Danny wrapped his arms protectively around the small dragon. I'll give Frost back, Danny said, his voice shaking but determined. But first you need to understand what really happened. Frost isn't being held prisoner. Frost chose to come here. Impossible, Thornscale growled. Dragon princes do not seek help from lesser species. Maybe you should ask Frost about that, Danny shot back, surprising himself with his boldness. A green dragon with elegant features stepped forward. Her voice was smoother than Thornscale's, though no less powerful. Commander, perhaps we should hear the child's account. Lady Emberwing's protocols require we investigate fully before making accusations. Thornscale looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. "Speak then, human child. Explain how you came to possess the heir to our throne." Danny took a deep breath and told them everything. He described the scratching at the door, finding Frost freezing in the storm, bringing the hatchling inside against all protocols. He explained about the thermal blankets, the food, the slow recovery. His parents stood beside him, adding details about the medical care they had provided. "Frost was dying," Danny said firmly. "Another few minutes in that cold and Frost would have frozen solid. I couldn't let that happen. I don't care what species you are. I couldn't just leave a baby to die." "You expect us to believe the prince simply appeared at your door?" Thornscale's skepticism was clear in every word. "I can prove it," Lisa said. She held up a data tablet. "Our habitat has security cameras. I have footage of everything." She activated the tablet and projected the video onto the plaza's display screen. Every dragon watched intently as the recording showed Frost crawling to the airlock, collapsing against the door, Danny opening it and carrying the frozen hatchling inside. The footage continued, showing the following days. The dragons watched in complete silence as the security footage played across the display screen. Danny could see their massive eyes tracking every detail. The video showed him wrapping Frost in blankets, offering water and food, staying up through the night to make sure the hatchling kept breathing. It showed Frost's scales changing from deathly pale to healthy blue. It showed the small dragon following Danny everywhere, chirping happily, trying to help with chores. When the footage ended, none of the dragons spoke for a long moment. The silence felt heavy and dangerous. Finally, the green dragon called Lady Emberwing stepped forward. Her voice was gentler now, thoughtful. "Commander Thornscale, I believe we may have made an error in our assumptions." "The evidence is clear," Thornscale admitted, though he sounded reluctant. "The human child did indeed save the prince's life. But that does not explain why the prince was alone in the first place, or why he sought help from humans rather than his own kind." "Maybe Frost can explain that," Danny said. He looked down at the hatchling still pressed against his chest. "Come on, Frost, show them what you showed me." Frost hesitated, then crawled up to Danny's shoulder. The small dragon looked at the massive adults with nervous golden eyes. Then Frost began to project the memories. Danny had seen these images before, but watching the adult dragons react to them was something else entirely. All 5 of the massive creatures went very still. Their eyes widened. Lady Emberwing made a sound of distress. The memories showed 2 adult dragons, one silver and one pale blue, protecting their nest during a terrible storm. The avalanche came without warning, tons of ice and rock falling from the cliffs above. The parent dragons used their bodies to shield their baby, pushing the hatchling toward a gap in the rocks. The last image was of the parents being buried under white snow while Frost tumbled to safety, alone and terrified. After the avalanche, the memories showed Frost wandering across endless ice fields. The hatchling called out for help, but received no answer. Days passed, or maybe just hours. Time seemed confused in the young dragon's memory. Frost grew weaker and colder until the lights of the human colony appeared in the distance like stars on the horizon. When the projection ended, Lady Emberwing had tears streaming down her scaled face. Even Thornscale looked shaken. "Prince Crystalwing's parents," Lady Emberwing whispered. "Lord Silverwind and Lady Frostwhisper. They were conducting a diplomatic survey of this region when they disappeared. We have been searching for 3 weeks. The prince was alone for days before reaching this settlement," a red dragon observed. "Any dragon outpost would have been much farther away. The human colony was his only chance of survival." Thornscale lowered his massive head, and when he spoke again, his voice had changed completely. The anger was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like shame. "Human child, I owe you an apology. We came here believing your people had committed a crime against our kind. Instead, you saved the life of our prince when he had nowhere else to turn." Danny felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. "I just did what anyone would do. Frost needed help." "Not anyone," Lady Emberwing corrected gently. "You violated your own colony's safety protocols to save a member of another species. You risked punishment and shared your limited resources with a stranger. That is not common behavior, even among dragons." A purple dragon with wise, ancient eyes spoke for the first time. "There is another matter we must address. Commander Thornscale, are you familiar with the ancient law of the life-debt bond?" Thornscale's eyes widened. "Surely not. That tradition has not been invoked in centuries." "What's the life-debt bond?" Danny asked, though he had a sinking feeling he already knew. Lady Emberwing explained. "It is one of our oldest and most sacred laws. When a dragon hatchling faces certain death and is saved by another being, a bond forms between them. The rescuer becomes the hatchling's bond guardian until the young dragon reaches maturity. During this time, the two cannot be separated without causing severe psychological harm to the hatchling." Danny felt Frost press closer against his neck, chirping softly. The small dragon's meaning was clear. Frost did not want to be separated from Danny. "This is unprecedented," Thornscale said. "A human child cannot serve as bond guardian to a dragon prince. The prince must be raised in dragon society, learn our ways, prepare for his future responsibilities." "The law does not care about convenience," the purple dragon stated firmly. "The bond has clearly formed. Look at how the prince clings to the boy. Listen to his distress at the thought of separation." Frost was indeed making unhappy sounds now, wrapping his tail tightly around Danny's arm. Danny stroked the hatchling's scales, trying to provide comfort. "What does this mean?" Greg asked, stepping forward protectively. "Are you saying Danny has to give up his life here to go live with dragons?" "Or we could simply take the prince by force," Thornscale suggested. "The bond would break eventually." "No!" Danny shouted before he could stop himself. "You can't just take Frost. That would hurt him." Lady Emberwing looked between Danny and Frost, her expression thoughtful. "Breaking a life-debt bond does not simply hurt human child. It can cause permanent damage to a young dragon's development. Some hatchlings never recover. They become withdrawn, unable to trust, incapable of forming the connections necessary for a healthy dragon life." "Then what do we do?" Lisa asked quietly. Lady Emberwing turned to face the other dragons. "I propose we consider an alternative. One that honors both the life-debt bond and the prince's heritage." "What alternative?" Thornscale demanded. "A cultural exchange," Lady Emberwing said. "The boy would spend part of each year on our throne world, raising the prince and learning our ways. The rest of the year the prince would live here with the boy, learning about human compassion and the qualities that made this child willing to risk everything for a stranger." The suggestion hung in the cold air like a challenge. Danny watched as the massive dragons looked at each other, clearly uncertain about this idea. Thornscale's bronze scales seemed to bristle with disapproval. "A dragon prince living among humans for half of each year?" Thornscale rumbled. "That goes against every tradition we have. Our young must learn strength, honor, and the ways of dragon leadership." "How can he learn these things in a human colony?" "With respect, Commander," Lady Emberwing replied. "Perhaps our traditions are what led us to assume the worst of these humans in the first place. We came here expecting treachery and found sacrifice instead. We expected greed and found generosity." The purple dragon nodded slowly. "The boy risked his own safety and broke his people's rules to save a dying stranger. Those are qualities we claim to value above all others. Yet we almost punished him for demonstrating them." Danny felt Frost trembling against his chest. The small dragon was following the conversation with frightened eyes. somehow understanding that his future was being decided. Danny hugged Frost closer and made a decision. "I'll do it," he said loudly. "If it means Frost gets to grow up healthy and happy, I'll spend half the year on your planet. I'll learn whatever you want to teach me." His parents both turned to stare at him with shocked expressions. "Danny, you don't have to agree to this," his mother said urgently. "You're 12 years old. We can't let you go live on an alien world alone." "I won't be alone," Danny pointed out. "I'll have Frost." Greg ran a hand through his hair, looking torn between pride and worry. "Son, this is a huge commitment. 6 months away from home every year until Frost is fully grown. That's at least 15 years of your life." "I know," Danny said. He looked down at Frost, who was watching him with those big golden eyes. But Frost's parents died protecting him. Somebody needs to be there for him now, and apparently, that somebody is me. Lady Emberwing's expression softened into something that might have been a smile. "The boy has courage and a sense of responsibility. These are good qualities for one who would guide a prince." "This is madness," Thornscale protested, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. "We cannot base the future of our royal line on the whims of a human child." "Is it a whim to honor a sacred bond?" the purple dragon asked. "Is it a whim to acknowledge that this child showed our prince more genuine care in 3 weeks than we did in 3 weeks of searching? We were hunting for political leverage and lost heirs. He was simply trying to keep another being alive." Frost suddenly squirmed out of Danny's arms and landed on the icy ground. The hatchling walked on shaky legs toward the massive adult dragons. Danny started to follow, worried, but his mother held him back. The small dragon stood before Commander Thornscale and projected another series of images. Danny could not see them this time, but he watched as the stern commander's expression changed. The bronze dragon's eyes widened, then closed briefly as if in pain. Frost showed the adult dragons everything. The loneliness of wandering through the ice alone. The fear of freezing to death in the darkness. The desperate hope when seeing the colony lights. And then the warmth of being wrapped in blankets, the comfort of Danny's voice, the safety of finally not being alone anymore. The hatchling also projected images of the past 3 weeks. Learning to trust again, playing fetch with Danny, falling asleep on Danny's pillow, feeling protected and cared for, perhaps for the first time since losing his parents. When the projection ended, Thornscale let out a long breath that created a cloud of steam in the cold air. The prince has made his feelings clear. He trusts the human boy completely. He feels safe with him. More than that, Lady Emberwing added softly, he loves him. The bond between them is genuine and deep. The red dragon, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Perhaps this is not madness but opportunity. Our 2 species have lived separately for generations, respecting boundaries but never truly understanding each other. This bond could be the bridge we never knew we needed." "A bridge?" Thornscale echoed. "Think about it," the red dragon continued. "A dragon prince raised partly by humans, learning their perspective. A human child learning dragon culture and values. In 15 years, when Prince Crystalwing reaches maturity, he will understand both species better than anyone in history. That knowledge could reshape how our peoples interact." Administrator Price had been listening quietly, but now she stepped forward. "If I may speak, this arrangement could benefit the human colony as well. We've always been isolated out here on the edge of known space. Having a connection to dragon society, even an informal one, could open doors for trade and cooperation." Danny's parents looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations that parents seem to master. Finally, Lisa nodded. "If this happens, we need guarantees about Danny's safety and education. We need to know he'll be treated well on your world." "He would be honored as the bond guardian of a prince," Lady Emberwing assured them. He would have access to the finest teachers, the best resources, and complete protection under dragon law. Any harm to him would be considered an attack on the royal family itself. "And Frost?" Danny asked. "When he's here with us, he'll be safe too?" "We would assign guards to watch over both of you," Thornscale said. His resistance seemed to be crumbling. "Discreetly, of course. The prince's safety is paramount," Frost chirped and ran back to Danny, climbing up his leg and settling on his shoulder. The hatchling nuzzled against Danny's cheek, projecting one final image. It showed Danny and Frost as adults, standing together on a platform between humans and dragons, bringing two worlds closer together. Danny smiled despite the tears forming in his eyes. "I think Frost just showed me our future." Lady Emberwing bowed her massive head toward Danny,